Hello, city staff. Welcome to my weekly video briefing as we go through this COVID-19 crisis together. Thank you again for all you do and the work you're doing supporting the city organization and providing services and also supporting the community in this time of great need. First, I wanted to give you an update on the response, kind of some key issues that we're facing right now. We do continue with the statewide stay-at-home order from the governor, and so we're still there. Don't know how long it's going to continue. It appears to be that it's going to continue at least through the middle of May, so we still have a little bit of a ways to go. We're doing a good job locally. If you look at the numbers, Santa Barbara and the South Coast is doing pretty well. North County is having higher numbers of outbreaks, both in the prison near Lompoc, but also just in the northern county communities as well. So the public health experts still think that it's prevalent within the community and we need to continue to practice the social distancing. So the message that we should continue to reiterate and practice ourselves is social distancing. Stay 6 feet away if you're in a public space. Wash your hands with soap and water frequently. Wear a mask when you're out in public, especially at high-profile places like grocery stores or pharmacies or some place where you may not be able to control the social distancing aspect of trying to stay 6 feet apart. Ventura County just modified their order with regards to their parks and beaches. They had closed them all down, and we had started feeling that impact up here, especially on weekends, of feeling people coming up for the day and enjoying our parks and beaches while they were closed in Ventura. They have reopened them, so hopefully that will pull back a little bit on that extra pressure we're feeling on those public places. The messaging continues to be, do get out and get some exercise and get some fresh air, but make sure you can do it safely. If a place looks crowded, go to a different place. Find a new nook in Santa Barbara or wherever you live or enjoy your neighborhood, and try to avoid the very popular places of Henry's Beach or Ledbetter Beach or the Rose Garden at the Mission, all of which are being quite crowded, but we continue to monitor it and manage it as best we can. Today we held a press conference with council members in the Gephardt Room. It was delivered in both English and Spanish, and it was really geared towards neighborhood safety. The police chief was on that. Officer Adrian Gutierrez was on there, Laura Doubles from Community Development talking about homelessness. The mayor was present and presented, as did council members Oscar Gutierrez and Alejandra Gutierrez. It was in both English and Spanish. Liliana Encinas did a great job translating, so thank you, Liliana. And so that was a good press conference with just good information to get out into the community. It'll be up on our website, and you can look for that more as we go. Tomorrow is a big day at City Council. It is Budget and Economic Development Day. So I want to give you a heads up of what I will be presenting along with Jennifer Tomaszewski, our Interim Finance Director, tomorrow as part of the budget. As I've said in the prior two video communications with you all, this is having a major financial impact on the city. It is large, it is significant, and it's still somewhat unknown, because we don't know how this is all going to play out. For this fiscal year, so we run on a fiscal year basis with our budgeting, which means we go from July 1st to June 30th. So this current fiscal year that we're in, we're projecting about a $15 million loss in revenues just between now and the end of June. That is on a general fund budget of about $170 million. So that's a substantial 10% hit that we're going to be taking this fiscal year. Steps we're going to take to do that is we're holding vacancies open. We're trying to drive additional expenditure savings. We're looking very carefully at any of our large fleet purchases, at capital, to make a judgment call about what is essential and needs to move forward now and what can we save from a cash flow and expenditure basis. And so we're managing that very tightly. I suspect, though, that we will have to use a substantial amount of our reserves to help balance the budget out between now and the fiscal year. It's a good thing we have reserves. It's what they're here for, but they're not unlimited supply, and so we have to be careful and manage our reserves carefully. And then next fiscal year, our projections are another $15 million deficit, and that is looking at bed tax coming back very slowly as we slowly reopen, sales tax continuing to get hit pretty hard, as well as departmental revenues if we're unable to lease some of our large parks and recreation facilities, if there's a cap on the size of gatherings and that sort of stuff. So that's another daunting effort on top of the $15 million this year. So really in a 1-year period of time, we're looking at close to a $30 million hit in loss of revenues. So that is a serious challenge for us to be managing, while at the same time continue to respond to the community as essential service workers and address the crisis. So we will continue to look at vacant positions very critically and garner savings from there. We'll look at scenarios where we might have to reduce services in the long run that we just can't afford to continue to provide. Those are tough conversations to have. Look at our capital planning and only move forward with those most critical capital planning efforts to try to save money in that regard. Continued use of one-time money is on the table, but like I said, reserves are limited in supply, so that only goes so far. Federal relief has not come yet. It is being discussed at the federal level, but it's currently not included in the bill before Congress, and there's talk about it being in the next bill, but until we get it, I don't think we can bank on that happening. I hope it does. Local government across the country is really hit hard by all this. And then yes, labor costs need to be on that as well, especially in the general fund where labor makes up close to 75% of the general fund budget. And so I don't have answers for you yet. Again, we're going to continue to methodically plod through this and work with our union organizations, but it is something that's going to have to be on the table and at least analyzed and looked at. The economic impact we'll then talk about tomorrow after we release the budget. So we'll release the budget. It's kind of the starting point of a conversation with council through budget hearings through the month of May, so no decisions are being made tomorrow. It's just kind of kicking off the process. We're then going to invite Dr. Peter Rupert from the UCSB Economic Forecast. He will give his perspective on the impact of the economy and what a recovery might look like. And then staff, Jason Harris and Nina Johnson out of my office, will talk about our economic development planning and how we're looking at kind of a threefold approach to this of the immediate crisis, the near-term challenges, and then the long-term revitalization of downtown. So we'll lay out our efforts in that regard as well. The mayor will also announce the formation of a business advisory task force that she is creating to assist and get outside input from the private sector about how we can be responding. So it's a challenge. We're in the middle of a disaster response. We have an economic disaster immediately on its heels, all at the same time that we're facing very large budget challenges. And so that's a difficult way to work through there. So that's kind of my summary of what's going on. Next, I wanted to answer questions that you all have given in the last week. Thank you for taking the time to get them in. So we've summarized them into 4 main categories for you. First question is, can the city look into an early retirement incentive program? So that is something we will look at. It's tricky to garner the real savings out of that unless you're eliminating a position that you're not going to fill in other stuff. So I know it's something that a lot of people near retirement age would be interested in taking, and we'll evaluate that and see if there's opportunities there. So we are looking at it. I don't want people to hold out hope that there's a big package though coming, because we've looked at this before 10 years ago and it doesn't quite give the savings that you initially think it might. Any news on the federal government providing relief dollars? I mentioned that briefly. We are certainly on the table for conversation back in Washington, D.C. Not to be partisan about it, but the Democrats have been pushing for a substantial relief package to include monies for state and local governments. The Republicans have been balking, especially in this go-around, with additional money for small business relief. So it doesn't look promising as of today that local government relief will be in this package. So we'll just have to continue to monitor that and see how that goes. Another question, are furloughs being considered, and what is the tipping point to consider? At this point, I would say everything's on the table, and nothing is off the table, but nothing's been decided yet either. Like I said, we're just now getting our hands around the challenge. We're going to look at those different options that I've talked about and try to put a package together. Working with the labor units and talking and seeing what you all want to do through your labor organizations will be very helpful. If you have suggestions or ideas, talk to your union leadership and share them with them. I cannot say that furloughs are off the table, but I can't say for sure that we're going to go that way either. So it's just something to stay tuned with. I think we're all sophisticated enough that something like that might very well be part of the package that we put together in the end. But I just don't have any details today for you in that regard. And then the fourth question regarding furloughs is why can't employees use accrued paid leave like we do now during the December break when we close down? So the challenge there is we need to save money through these furloughs. And so if you use your leave banks, the city is still paying you. You're still getting your same paycheck. You're just using your vacation leave or some other leave bank during that furlough time. So if we do go the furlough route, it really is a reduction in pay because that's where the city organization gets the savings from that. When we first closed between Christmas and New Year's back in 2009 or 10, I forget the year exactly, it was an unpaid furlough. We actually reduced our paychecks, spread it out over the year, and took the time off without being paid. And then when the economy started recovering, we kept that time period off because it's kind of a low use time period and most people want to take it off, but then switched to having people use their accrued leave. So if we get to a furlough, it would be a non-paid furlough because that's just the way we get to the numbers to start closing that financial gap. So those are the questions for this week. Thank you very much for them. Please send them to Pam Antill for next week if you have more questions. Be happy to answer them. Like I did last week, maybe on a little shorter scale, I do want to wrap up with some recognition. I really do appreciate all the work that's going out there. If you have someone you'd like to recognize as kind of an unsung hero, please forward them the information to Pam or myself as well, and I'm happy to recognize them. Environmental services, we've seen a real uptick on illegal dumping around town. So I just think kind of the stress of what's happening throughout the community, people needing to move and relocate, we're just seeing a number of illegal dumps going on. And so they've been very responsive and I appreciate that. And they were also very helpful in getting the porta potties out and in place around the homeless encampments, which I talked about last week, that we're trying to manage and not disrupt, but also have them have access to sanitary facilities to keep it clean and safe in that regard. Nick Kabugos and his staff has been doing a great job on looking at the graffiti uptick around the community. People aren't working, they're not going to school, and so we're seeing a little uptick in graffiti. And so, but his team has been out there hitting it hard, really appreciate that. Harbor Patrol, park rangers, and special units of the police department have been doing a very nice job trying to engage the community in these public spaces and asking them not to congregate and maintain that social distancing practice. So I really appreciate them doing that, and it's often hard because oftentimes they are having to confront groups who are not very cooperative, and sometimes they take some abuse back, and so I recognize that. I appreciate what you're trying to do. As I've said before, it's trying to strike this balance of keeping our public open spaces available to us all so that we can get some fresh air and get outside, but it requires cooperation from everyone, and they're trying to do their best to help facilitate that cooperation. And thank you to the people who are volunteering at the county EOC. They have a lot of needs, kind of running the county operation. And so a number of you have signed up through their portal to volunteer in that. I know a number of you are also going to be volunteering at the hotel on Outer State Street that's being set up for vulnerable homeless populations to stay at, to keep them safe. These are not people who've been identified with COVID-19, but instead is the room key operation that you hear Governor Newsom talk about. And so that is coming in. I think it's the Pepper Tree Inn on Outer State Street, and the county is looking for volunteers to help with the check-in process. So you'll be working at a table, checking people in as they go into the hotel, and National Guard is doing it this week and county personnel are doing it this week, but they need volunteers to help with that going forward. So if you're interested in that, talk to your manager or department head. There's a website where you can sign up, and would really appreciate you doing that if you've got the time and capacity within your day job here with the city. It's not an overtime. This is one of those issues that if you're a little bit slower in your work and you want to assist out there, that would be greatly appreciated by the county and by me. We do have a substantial homeless population in Santa Barbara. They're very vulnerable and exposed as part of this crisis, and so getting those that are elderly or have underlying conditions into a safe environment at the hotel is a great humanitarian opportunity. So if you're able to volunteer for that, we'd really appreciate it. That's all I have for today. We'll talk to you next week. Thank you again for all you're doing. Stay safe, and we'll see you. Thanks.